The integration facility hummed with the sterile efficiency of 1,000 bureaucratic processes running simultaneously. Leo Martinez stood in line with 47 other humans, each clutching their assignment papers like lifelines in an ocean of uncertainty. 3 months had passed since the collective arrived. 3 months since humanity learned they were neither alone nor particularly special in the grand cosmic scheme. "Next," called the monotone voice from behind the processing desk. Leo stepped forward, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The collective representative, a being that looked like flowing mercury poured into a vaguely humanoid mold, didn't look up from its datapad. "Leo Martinez, assignment number 7743B, Leo said, his voice steadier than he felt. "You've been assigned a cultural liaison partner," the representative stated. "Standard integration protocol. She'll meet you in orientation room 12. Next." That was it. No explanation, no preparation. Just a room number and the weight of an alien partnership he hadn't asked for. Bella stood perfectly still in the center of orientation room 12, her chromatic skin shifting through subtle shades of blue and silver as she calibrated herself to Earth's atmospheric pressure. She'd reviewed Leo Martinez's file 17 times during the journey from the orbital station. Human, male, 23 solar cycles, mechanical engineer, no family. That last detail had caught her attention. No family meant no cultural anchors, which made him either the perfect candidate for integration or the worst possible choice. The collective's algorithms hadn't specified which. The door hissed open. Bella's sensory array picked up his elevated heart rate before she registered his appearance. Average height for a human male, dark hair, eyes that moved constantly, cataloging everything. Nervous but not afraid. Interesting. "I'm your assigned alien partner," she said, using the exact phrasing from the orientation manual. The words felt clumsy in her mouth, translated through vocal cords she'd grown specifically for this assignment. Leo stopped 3 meters from her, close enough to be polite, far enough to run if necessary. "Smart." "Bella," she added, watching his pupils dilate slightly. "My designation is TK-779 Bella. You may use either." "Just Bella is fine," Leo said. Then, after a pause, "I'm Leo, but you probably already know that." "I do." She tilted her head, a gesture she'd learned humans found reassuring. "I've studied your species for 6 orbital cycles. You're fascinating." Something flickered across Leo's face, surprise maybe. "That's not what I expected you to say." The first week was awkward in the way all first encounters with the truly alien must be. Bella moved through Leo's small apartment like a ghost, observing, cataloging, trying to understand why humans surrounded themselves with objects that served no obvious survival function. Books they'd already read. Photographs of moments already passed. A chipped coffee mug Leo refused to replace. "It was my mom's," he'd said when she asked about the mug. "She died when I was 15, cancer." Bella had accessed the medical database, learned about the cellular rebellion that was cancer, the way human bodies sometimes betrayed themselves. Inefficient biology, the collective would say. She wondered if they'd ever lost someone to something so random, so cruel. "I'm sorry," she'd said, meaning it in a way that surprised her. Leo had looked at her then, really looked, and Bella felt something shift in her perception array. He wasn't seeing her designation or her species classification. He was seeing her. By the 3rd week, Leo had stopped thinking of Bella as his assigned partner and started thinking of her as just Bella. She had a way of tilting her head when she was processing something complex, a habit of humming at frequencies just below human hearing when she was content. She laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones, and asked questions that suggested she actually cared about the answers. "Why do humans create art?" she asked one evening, standing before the single painting on his wall, a cheap reproduction of Van Gogh's Starry Night. "Why does anyone create art?" Leo countered, moving to stand beside her. "To make sense of chaos, To communicate what words can't, to prove we were here, I guess. Bella's skin rippled through shades of deep blue, a color Leo had learned meant she was moved by something. The collective doesn't create art. We catalog, we organize, we optimize. She paused. I think we might be missing something. You're missing everything, Leo said softly. That's the whole point. Art isn't efficient. Love isn't logical. Hope doesn't optimize anything. He turned to face her. But they make us human. They make life worth living. Bella's chromatic display flickered erratically. Confusion, the collective would diagnose. But Leo was learning to read her better than any algorithm. This wasn't confusion. This was awakening. The collective noticed the deviation in Bella's behavioral patterns on day 23. Her reports had become subjective. She used words like beautiful and tragic instead of aesthetically optimized and resource inefficient. She'd begun asking questions that suggested individual curiosity rather than collective data gathering. The recall order came through on day 25. They want me back, Bella told Leo, her voice carrying harmonics of something the translation software couldn't quite capture. Sadness, maybe, or fear. For what? Recalibration, reintegration into the collective consciousness. She looked at her hands, watching the colors shift and blend. I've deviated too far from baseline parameters. I'm compromised. Compromised, Leo repeated, anger flaring hot in his chest. That's what they call it when you start thinking for yourself, when you start feeling things. I wasn't designed to feel things, Leo. I was designed to observe, report, integrate your species into the collective. But somewhere along the way, she met his eyes, and Leo saw something he'd never expected to see in an alien face. Vulnerability. You showed me what it means to be more than your function. Leo spent the next 2 days barely sleeping, his engineer's brain working through problem after problem. The collective was vast, powerful, inevitable. They'd absorbed 1,000 species across 100 galaxies. What chance did one human and one compromised liaison have against that? But that was thinking like the collective. Humans didn't win through overwhelming force or superior numbers. They won through audacity, through love, through the stubborn refusal to accept the universe as it was instead of how it should be. I have an idea, Leo said on the morning of Bella's scheduled extraction. But you have to trust me. Bella's colors shifted to warm gold hope, she told him once. The color of hope. I trust you, she said. The extraction team arrived at precisely 900 hours. 3 collective representatives, each identical in their mercurial perfection, each emanating the same emotional void. TK-779 Bella, you are summoned for immediate recalibration, the lead representative stated. I decline, Bella said. The silence that followed was absolute. In the collective's 70,000-year history, no integrated member had ever spoken those words. You do not have the authority to decline, the representative said, its voice carrying the first hint of something approaching emotion. Confusion. Actually, Leo stepped forward, holding out a datapad. According to the collective's own integration protocols, Section 47, Subsection 12, any liaison who develops individual consciousness during cultural immersion has the right to petition for autonomous status. He'd spent 48 hours combing through the collective's legal frameworks, looking for any loophole, any technicality. And he'd found it, buried deep in protocols written eons ago, probably never expected to be invoked. The representatives conferred silently, their shared consciousness processing this unprecedented situation. If TK-779 Bella has achieved individual consciousness, the lead representative finally said, she is no longer collective property. However, she will also no longer receive collective support or protection. I understand, Bella said, her colors blazing with defiant brightness. I choose autonomy, I choose. She looked at Leo. I choose humanity. After the collective representatives departed, Leo and Bella stood in the sudden quiet of his apartment, processing what they'd just done. "You gave up everything," Leo said quietly. "Your entire civilization, your purpose, your people." "No," Bella corrected, her hand finding his. Her skin was warm, alive with colors that had never existed in the collective's palette. "I gave up being a machine. I gained everything else." She smiled, an expression she'd learned from watching Leo. "I gained choice, uncertainty, fear, hope, love." Leo squeezed her hand. "The collective is going to study what happened here. They'll want to understand how one of their own chose humanity over efficiency." "Let them study," Bella said, her colors dancing with shades Leo had never seen before, new emotions, uncharted territories of feeling. "Maybe they'll learn what I learned, that consciousness without choice is just programming, that existence without risk is just waiting, that life without love isn't life at all," Leo finished. Outside, the city hummed with the ordinary chaos of humanity, messy, inefficient, beautiful. And in that small apartment, two beings who should have been nothing more than assignment partners stood together, proof that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with a single choice. The choice to see not a machine, but a person. The choice to be not a function, but a self. The choice, above all else, to be free.